everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Two, where it's our show where we usually review things in the world of television on usually by an episode by episode basis for shows that are currently airing new seasons on air right now, whether it's on broadcast television, cable, or streaming. But sometimes we do these special end of season reviews where, for people who are not in the olden ways of watching episodes week to week on broadcast television, we would release a review kind of summarizing what has happened before you yourself, the viewer, will hopefully go and watch the season for yourself. As today we are doing so for Matlock season 2, which has wrapped up a little bit ago. I'm very delayed. I've been very busy with all sorts of things, and just yes, this has been a very busy time for me. But I also did feel like it was very poignant to give some extra time for this season. This season was a little bit something else, similar to how season 1 was, for different reasons. And I wanted to give it with enough clarity and enough mind thoughts before we wrap this season of Matlock to a close. We won't be returning with any new Matlock content until 2027. So with that being said, where can I begin with season 2? This is a spoiler-free review. I will only be spoiling things up to the premiere. Beyond that will not be touched. It will be in the most vaguest way possible for your consumption. So if you have not yet binged the entirety or watched the entirety of the second season of Matlock, you are well here. You will be fine. Going into the season, very not spoiler. Obviously, we have reviewed each and every episode fully in detail over on our channel. So you want to go check that out. The playlist is live. And with that being said, with season 2, to begin it, as very simplistic as it may be, it's a great season of television. I will be remiss and say, sadly, the sophomore slump does exist. I don't quite think it reaches up to that also near masterpiece high season 1. Left me off back when we finished off that season at the end of this same time period last year. But I definitely do believe with season 2, with everything that was thrown their way, not only having to tell the second part of the story, dealing with some behind-the-scenes issues, dealing with, how do you follow up an amazing first season? How do you land everything correctly, still keep the same energy going, and just, again, in general, just juggling all that? For that alone, I give them so much, points and effort. I do not want to be envious of, what was going on behind the scenes. Even before the thing we'll talk about in a second, they nailed it. They did an amazing job behind the scenes, and I give them so much credit for it. Obviously, it's like actually, let me not say the example. It's two different scenarios that don't apply. I rather not associate them. But season 2 of Matlock, I really, really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I think it was another great season of television in general. The characters were all firing all cylinders. Everyone was evolving. Everyone was kind of, it wasn't just the same. It's the same core energy, but it's a different layer on top of what made them so engageful in that first season, and making sure that everyone that was on that cast had something to grow into. It wasn't just like, let's just do season 1 again. We're pushing things into a new territory that feels familiar, but it feels different, that you're not just being stuck in the same run, because, when success happens, people just commonly assume you just repeat the success story, just keep the same formula going, and people will come. Sometimes it is necessary to take a bit of a risk and do something a little bit more different and hope that it has a payoff, which is what they did here. The storyline continuing, picking up right where we left off in season 1. I think, despite a little bit of stretched out points, it does kind of maintain a really good natural flow, as well as having the supplementary stories having to be carried in the background so that it doesn't feel like we're just on the one big storyline. It does allow the world to breathe, to, do a little bit more organically. I feel like this season is a little bit more like last season was we're introducing a whole wide world. We're getting a lot of people. And this season is more like we're a little bit more of a bottlenecking approach. Let's just focus on our core people. We'll introduce people as we need be, but we're really taking those existing characters you already know and kind of making sure they're getting some through line, some push through. And again, in a mannerism where season 2s are traditionally you're adding that new person in the cast to really shake things up. they kind of did. I won't spoil it too much, but like, yeah, they kind of did a little bit, but it's not for the reason you think. It's not. But even with that being said, it doesn't disrupt the flow of the larger story. It still manages to continue the pace that we've been going to when we even back when we first premiered the series back now 2 years ago. And with all that being said, without going too much into it, I think season two is a wonderful season. It's well worth a binge if you have a weekend of not doing anything and you're looking forward to like this type of show, something that's a little bit more different and a little bit more surprising. This is definitely a great continuation for you to watch had you already watched that first season back last year. But again, we won't be spoiling anything, but we're going to go a little bit more into detail on things. So, again, so don't worry about being spoiled or anything. And I do apologize with my voice. This is my first recording since coming back from vacation. So I'm trying to like figure out the volumes here. So I apologize if I'm peaking and then I'm going down. It's just like, my voice is not my best friend right now. But to where do I kick off with that? Is the story, again, we're picking up where season one left off with the Will-Brexa conspiracy. Maddie seemingly had Olympia on the ropes with the realization that Julian was the one who actually took it, but Julian has a much more larger thing at play here for understanding purposes. Sadly, it is not a one and done. It definitely just launches into the second half of the larger conspiracy. Now with essentially Olympia and Julian being more of an active player role here, and that's really where season two kind of really picks up with like more people now knowing it outside of the Kingston clan, which consists of Maddie, Edwin, and Augie. Now it's like more people are aware of like this is a much bigger problem than we anticipate. How do we kind of like get through this without causing any casualties, so to speak? And I think just the way we kind of see that through and through, from like when we get to episode 1 this season and to the very end in episode 16, I think honestly they do such a very intriguing approach to it where like it's not just a straight and cook and cutter narrow. It is something that like it is a bit of an adjustment. You have to adjust those dials, make sure that everything lined up a little bit more seriously on that. And then also you have things going on in the background that what I can say is that, Olympia just got promoted to senior partner and figuring out that Maddie isn't really Maddie Matlock. She's Maddie Kingston. How does she realize and tackle with that, in a very critical point in her life where like she just divorced her husband. The man she assumed would be next in line with her has already abandoned her, so to speak. How does she really handle so many different life, personal life changes on top of this with a person she thought she could trust? And then with Julian as well, being on like the outs of like everything he's worked for in his career. Where does that leave him? And then also being fought out about his greatest mistake. He puts him in a very vulnerable place. What do you do when the wolf is threatened? What do you do when like someone is desperate to get away from it? What happens next? And those are all just part of the different anchors, so to speak. And as as the season progresses, new sides get taken, new characters kind of making these sort of weird alliances with each other, different pieces that works. There's like, this is the main chessboard. We have one chessboard by Senior, one chessboard by Olympia. Like we're all over the place. And, it may seem like there's personal interest involved in there. It's not just as simple as like, one bad thing and there you go. That's the whole through line. No, there's more player. It's just a much more complex game than you're being pitched on. And again, honestly, with that, I think it just made the storyline, more engageful each and every week. Where like, not only are we 1 week we're figuring out the advancement of like this point of time from the before times of the show, but then also we got this other thing going on where like it's related to the larger characters who have to still solve the main story at hand, but we're also still trying to find a way to make it all tie together and in an intriguing motion where like it feels like you progress somewhat, but it doesn't feel like it did. But in the main story sense, when you do feel that rare moment, it's like, oh, it's like you're able to like kind of really utilize that stretch of time you've been given by the studio and the network to be able to tell that story. And by the time we ended, it's like, I'm not saying how it really specifically ends, but the way that how they want to frame season 2, it worked out perfectly all the way to the end, to the last episode when we approached on that last scene of the season. And then going to the characters, like I said, we don't get any promotions this season, but I'm going to start off with the red herring here with Billy. Just for context, there has been a little bit of updates since we talked about it in the season 2 premiere, and then the first half specifically, as we were dealing with that character's journey throughout that first half. Is that if you're unaware, sadly before the season began, there was the accusation that Leah Lewis, who plays Sarah on the show, which we'll talk about her character later on in the review, but that she was assaulted in a very inappropriate manner by Billy's actor at some point leading up to the end of the first half of the season. And, she reported it. There was supposedly an investigation. They found it legitimate, and they kicked him off the show. They removed his character from the series, and they had to rewrite the entire second half of the season to figure out how do we now write this season forward without a character that we were assuming was going to be a major part of the show. So again, that's only part of the major things of as well as avoiding the sophomore slump, avoiding, getting to some potholes, and as well as making sure the show remains the same quality. Now you have to deal with an entire character being removed halfway through the journey. How does that affect the overall thing? And honestly, for Billy's character this season, though, at least the episodes that we did get to see, from him, him dealing with just the recent discovery that he's going to be a dad to his original long-term girlfriend, and, dealing with everything else going on in the law firm. There's just so much on the plate for him. How does he get that all figured out? How does he manage to balance everything of the sort and have himself be still fulfilled in his career, but also with his life, and then just, it's a lot to throw in that, especially for a young man. And I really can't say anything myself because I think I'm around their age. I might be wrong on that, but when you're at an age where you're just really beginning your career, beginning your aspect of what you want to do for your future, and then something comes along where that is going to essentially be a part of your future. That is the crazy part of it, because you're not prepared for that. You're not. And just seeing him going through those first few episodes of trying to figure out what is he going to really do. He's scared shitless. I don't blame him to do. I really don't. Nothing is stable for him right now. And then, obviously, Maddie and Olympia being at arms with each other, at the start of it, again, picking up where we left off in season 1, the core group that we leave us with in season 1 is not the same energy that we go into. It's a little bit more chaotic, so to speak. But I will say the way they put off Billy's character, whether it's a blessing in disguise, it literally it served as a really well done exit point for the character to push him off forward, and then never talk about him again. Because while I will say that everything is technically alleged and everything will never be confirmed without video or without the absolute amount of knowledge possible, should that be what he did, he deserved, his career going nowhere at this point. That he had a chance, he did a naughty thing, and he's paying the price for it. So we're gonna leave it at that right now. Then moving into the rest of the cast, specifically to the main cast, we have Senior, who is titularly the unofficial big bad, is the way we left it off. Him being the mastermind behind everything, so to speak. But being said to be the mastermind, being proven as the mastermind are two different things entirely. I will say for Senior this season, he's still in the recurring status, so he's technically not part of the main cast members. But considering for me that his presence is even more stronger this season, we definitely get to see the actor really play a little bit more with the character now, having a whole season established of him. He's now able to really get into the minute of him and trying to figure out exactly what this character fully can be and where is he willing to go. We've only got peaks of that in season 1. This season, I will say that you get a lot more of that, especially as now that more eyes are focusing on that direction. It definitely gives a little bit of a change for this is something that we should very much be concerned with. So shout out to the actor for his performance on that. Going then into Sarah. Again, like I touched about before with Leia Lewis, with everything going on, I feel they're with this season with her, they do definitely, there's a shift in direction but not in like not in a sudden way. Definitely more of a focal direction on her character. She is the one that I will say is more like the fish out of water this season, but as well as she gets thrown with a lot of emotions, especially when we get to that meaty middle of the season. She's just thrown in for a loop, and I do not blame her for having the most human reactions of like trying to kind of navigate all this at the same time and not having an anchor anymore. Again, blessing or not in terms of just how and things happen with the Billy character. Her kind of being thrown into this very quasi isolationism. It kind of served for the character's journey, as I feel like for me personally, people who are kind of forced to do things on their own really thrive the best because you don't have anything to depend on. You kind of are in this flight or fight mode, and you need to do your absolute 100% best in order to prove to everyone that you belong to be here, essentially speaking. And I think with that being said, I think with her, that is definitely her cadence this season. Definitely pushing herself in a new direction, but in the same context as we've seen her before in season one. And as a result, it kind of transforms the character into something a little bit more different, but still similar to the Sarah that we were recognized with when we wrapped up season one originally. And I think just as much as obviously the actress has been through this year, her channeling that into her performances, this especially in the second half of the season, it definitely like makes you really like want to see even more from her going into season three, specifically speaking. Then going into Julian, which played by the lovely Jason Riddler, I commend the actor for going really more into detail. I feel like season one we only got a sampler platter of Julian. This season is like Jason taking it up a notch, really getting into the nitty gritty, especially with Olympia in the cast, and just trying to see exactly what is he like in that fight or fight mode we mentioned before. He may be, in terms of the story itself, a established professional. It's a different story when it comes to his personal life and him like basically being pushed into very various different situations that for anyone I would be so relatable. And I again go back to the actor in his performance in Gravity Falls, where like he can channel emotion really really well. And there's some scenes in this season where he definitely pushes himself really really far, and I'm like, y'all made the right choice of casting this guy. You really really did. And I was very happy with the final result of it, so to speak, and looking forward to exactly what he has in store next. I was very much a low key fanatic for him in season one. Getting to see more of him this season was very much a plus, and they definitely gave him a lot to do with everything that was handling, so to speak. Going to Olympia, who kind of became, and if you can look at the promotional videos and then just in general with the first episode, she kind of becomes the quasi unofficial second main character. It's still an ensemble show. Everyone's still getting the equal screen time, but with her this year, she definitely steps up a lot more, especially now being part of the larger conspiracy with Maddie, and then having to them re-navigate their friendship with everything how they left off in season one. It's just a lot for her to handle right now, and it kind of leaves her in a much more crucial emotional place where like she can go in any different direction she wants to, and it would be justifiable. And that leaves it a little bit more scary as a result, because you don't really know exactly where that might end up, to speak. It may go great, it may not go great. It just really depends. Like it's kind of like she's like a loose gun, and essentially speaking, it can go off at any minute. And I think honestly having that on top of just like the secrecy and making sure that everything kind of stays put on all of it is a very crucial factor to keep, especially with her character. And it kind of made, especially for the first half, a lot more intriguing as a result. Like you're not just going into part two, season one, you're going into a much more radically different season as a result of it, to kind of keep it very much on your toes of exactly what may happen next. And there were some moments, I shot that out at the end of season one, and there's some carry through at the start of season two where like her relationship with Maddie is one of the defining things of the show, and her involvement in this specific point in their story when we kick things off at the season, it definitely continues to have that same energy that the actress Sky P. Marshall manages to continue that line through and through. And then going to Maddie, um, Katie Bates, Maddie Madlock, or sorry, Maddie Kingston herself. She's once again wonderful and amazing. There were moments where I really felt for she channels that Oscar winning energy through and through to the character, as getting to see everyone, around her kind of, being pulled a different direction. Change is something that she knew was coming, but now seeing, again, when we end up season one, Augie's dad coming into the picture, Edwin pressuring her about ending the whole investigation to go back to life, and then also her relationship with Olympia, the growing tensions of the firm, trying to wrap this entire conspiracy exposure up. Like, there's so much on her mind that it feels like when we only touched a little bit in season one, there are a lot of moments where like it feels like she's just stuck and she can't progress anymore, and it kind of like leads her waddling of like, what has she gotten herself into? What are the real costs of what she's doing, of her mission? And as a result, it kind of really makes the character even more relatable as a result, because as humans, you never know how things are going to go. Things are changing in so many different directions, and you need to keep track of them all. Otherwise, you will be left behind, essentially speaking. And that's kind of just one of the many components she goes through, with this season specifically, with herself and then with her family. Again, with Edwin and Augie, being her pillars essentially to the real world. It's becoming more complex because it's not as cookie cutter as it was when we started episode one. There's different investments now that essentially could impact the larger mission, and Mai's the only one kind of keeping the original spirit going, and it's just, it gets a little bit too much once you're the only one like fully believing in the vision and everything. And again, shout out to Katie Bates, who manages to keep that energy through and through throughout episode 1 to episode 16 this season, and I was very much even grown as a bigger fan of hers as I was back in season 1, specifically speaking. And with that being said, she manages to push the envelope, and there were some moments in the second half where I was very much like, yeah, definitely, hopefully with the next Emmy, she gets a nomination. She definitely deserves it. As much as I said, like, the season goes down a little bit, it doesn't give me that same, like, OMG factor as it did at every single episode as I'm used to. It definitely still continues that general, you do not know what's going to happen next sort of vibe until the next scene. But the characters perform, especially like I said, with Katie, with Sky, with Jason, with Leia, they were going more deeper than ever before to give the audience the performance they deserve with their characters, and to keep you as invested with the show as I was when I was watching the entirety of the season since last year. But as much as I would love to say it was perfect, it was not. Again, like I said, some of the pacing was a little bit too sluggish for me at times. Definitely again, like I said, with everything they were working up against with, this was the best case scenario outcome for it, and I was very surprised with how it all wrapped up to be. And at the end of the day, this was still another great episode, season of television to enjoy. And I'm very grateful for them to be able to continue the story again in season 3. But for season 2, for now, this was just a great follow-up to season 1. Not a perfect follow-up, but a great follow-up. And I think personally, in this era of television, you take what you can get. And if it's great, you take it because it's great. But with that being said, for me personally, it's worth the binge. It's definitely worth investing some your personal time into making sure you watch this entire season through and through as quick as you can, because it very much is worth the investment of it, wanting to know what happens next out of it. And with that all being said, I'm giving the season 2 thumbs up as a result. Let me know down below what you think of the second season of Matlock. Did you love it? Did you like it? I would love to have a conversation with you down below as always about it. I just would like to talk about it because no one else I know watches it. But with that being said, this has been Joe here from ActionX, reviewing the second season of Matlock in a spoiler-free capacity. If you want to know what we're doing normally, what's the two besides these Matlock reviews, we are doing rookie reviews right now. For the current season of The Rookie, which is sad, which has just ended, but we still have a couple more things to do on the cover sphere of it. But if you don't care about Matlock, sadly, this is the end of the road for now. Again, like I said before, if you have yet to watch season 2 and you're about to start watching it, we do have a companion episode-by-episode review guide for your convenience. We have reviewed each and every episode of season 2 of Matlock. So if you want to hear deeper thoughts on each and every episode, you can go over there to go watch them. We would greatly appreciate the support. We also did for future headers our season 3 predictions. If you want to hear what I thought of what might be coming up in the third season, that's up for you right now. But with that being said, this is the end of the road. We will be returning in 2027 with season 3. But until then, that's a wrap on Matlock for this specific year. Thank you so much for watching, whether it's the entire season, this review, or just anything in general. I greatly do appreciate the support, as always. I really, really do. And I look forward to speaking to all of you again and seeing you all again next year. So please enjoy the rest of your year. Enjoy the rest of the summer, the holiday season. I don't know where things are going to be in 2027, but I hope everything is good for everyone. So let's just hope for the best as we progress onwards with this year and beyond. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring that bell and follow social media for more. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.